Good morning, everyone. We are pleased to welcome 2011 U.S. Open champion Rory McIlroy to the interview area. Rory, just talk a little bit about your preparation this week and how the course is playing.
Yeah, it's certainly different to when we see it in January for the farmers, but it's really good. I had my first look at the course yesterday, played 18 holes. The setup's great. It's fair. Obviously with the dry Southern California climate, the greens have the possibility to get very firm. So I think they've taken that in mind, and the rough is playable. You can hit it in the rough and at least have a chance to get it up around the green, and sort of use your short game to scramble and see if par. It's not as penal as some other U.S. Opens, but I think the setup's good. It's really fair. I've heard nothing but positive praise from a lot of the players, and it's nice to come to a venue where we all know it pretty well from sort of being on the PGA Tour schedule, and there's not really any secrets out there. We all know what to do and how to play it, and it's just a matter of who can execute over the 4 days.
We're going to take one here from the WebEx. With your Player Advisory Committee chairman's hat on, can you comment on reports that Green's books are set to be banned on PGA Tour?
Yeah, I mean, look, everything that's talked about in those meetings is somewhat confidential, but what I can say, I think, I use a green book, and I'd like to get rid of them. I think everyone's in the same boat, or most guys on tour are in the same boat, that, if it's going to be available to us and it helps us, people are going to use it. But I think for the greater good of the game, I'd like to see them be outlawed and for them not to be used anymore.
Right here.
Rory, what do you attribute your struggles in the first round at majors to, since you last won one?
Probably just putting a little too much pressure on myself, playing too carefully, being a little tentative. I think that sort of sums it up.
Okay. And what was it like meeting Yuka yesterday, and what advice did you give her?
Yeah, it was great. I watched a lot of the Women's Open a couple of weeks ago, and it was cool. I first saw Yuka and her swing, and sort of read about her story at the previous Women's U.S. Open in Texas in December of 2020, and it's pretty cool. I mean, I think she played okay there, and obviously she played great at Olympic. And it was cool. It was cool to meet her. It was cool to let her follow for a few holes, and obviously the talk turned to the golf swing and all that sort of stuff. And all I really said to her, she asked how can she be consistent for a long time, and how can she keep this sort of form going into the future. And I just said, what I've always tried to do is write everything down. Just, whatever feelings you have after a practice session, even if the swing looks the same on the video, the feelings that you have and the swing thoughts could be slightly different. And those feelings and those thoughts can come and go day to day. That's just the way golf is. But I think if you write everything down and sort of keep a journal of that sort of stuff, it's always a reference point to go back to. So that's all I was trying to tell her is to and it's boring to be at the top of the game for a very long time. You just have to keep doing the same things. Whatever works. And it's mundane and it's tedious, but everyone's got a blueprint of what their swing is, and if they keep on top of it and they do the same things, do the same drills, over time, you fast forward 20 years, you're probably going to have a really good career.
All the way on the right.
Roy, what do you think Mike Davis's legacy is going to be with the USGA?
Drivable par fours. He likes a drivable par four. I think Mike will be remembered for someone that wasn't afraid to change it up. He brought the U.S. Open to a few different venues, Erin Hills, Chambers Bay, but he also wasn't afraid to mess around with the courses a little bit in terms of making what wouldn't be traditionally a drivable par four, for example, into a drivable par four, playing tees 100 yards up, even going back to Olympic when we played it in 12, moving that tee up 100 and whatever yards on 16 on Sunday, which probably cost a couple of people, the U.S. Open title. So just keeping players on their toes, I guess. I think that's the big. He's probably brought the USGA and the whole organization forward, being a little more progressive with it, and that's probably going to be what his legacy is.
Right behind me, Todd.
Rory, there's talk now of USGA and maybe the other organizations moving away from municipal golf courses such as this one to the more kind of elite 4 or 5. How do you feel about that, given you've participated in these public opens, so to speak? How do you feel about kind of them just getting back to a core of courses?
I would be in favor of that. I like that. I think, when you think of a U.S. Open, I think you think of the iconic venues that it has been played on. Obviously Pebble being one. Even like going back to 13 at Marion, I thought was a huge success. I thought that was a really great U.S. Open. Obviously Shinnecock. There's courses that are just synonymous with U.S. Opens, and I don't really think we need to go too far outside of those. It sort of worked for the Open Championship. They have a rota of a few courses. Yes, they went to Portrush for the first time in a long time a couple of years ago. But I think I think the reason Augusta has become what it has become is because people are so familiar with it, and year after year they tune in, they know the holes on TV, and I think it is one of the reasons that the Masters has become the spectacle that it is.
Thank you.
Hi, Roy. Pete was saying a couple of days ago that he thinks you're making real progress with this swing. Where do you feel you're up to now?
I feel good. Pete and I had a few really good days in Florida last week. Like the technical and mechanical parts of it are all there. It's just a matter of going out in a U.S. Open setting and just trusting what I've been doing in practice, and then that gets more into the mental side of things, and just being really clear and really committed in what you're trying to do, and being as free on the course as I am on the range, and that's really that's the big challenge. But in terms of where everything's heading, it's definitely in the right direction, and we had some really good days last week.
When you're driven and desperate to win majors again, how do you take the pressure off yourself in the first round?
I guess by being indifferent, not by not caring, but by not putting myself under pressure that I have to care, I guess is the right way to do it. If I went out and played this golf course any other week, and you play free and you play, and it's just the same thing as I said to Adam there. It's just that you have to, you just have to, be able to swing with that freedom, and that's sort of what I'm trying to get back to. And it's, there's no surprise that if I do have not a great first day, that I'm able to play well the rest of the tournament, because that does free you up. It's like, okay, well, the bad one's out of the way, now I can just sort of freewheel, and it's just a matter of freewheeling from the Thursday and not the Friday.
Alex on the right.
Rory, fashion question first. The jacket, which looks pretty cool, by the way.
Thank you.
I mean, can you talk about something like that? Would you wear that out on the course? Can you wear that on the course?
No, it's I just came from the fitness trailer. I just did a little workout, so it was the first thing I sort of took out of my suitcase. So
right.
It's comfortable, but no, I don't think I could swing in it.
Okay. Second question, when you were answering the question about the greens book, you said that, you thought that maybe it would be better for golf if there wasn't a greens book. I think that was pretty much what you said. Can you talk about what other things you'd like to see changed that you think would better golf that currently are being implemented in the game like now? Like if it's anchoring putting or whatever it would be?
I thought we got rid of anchoring putting a few years ago.
Well, I don't know. Did we?
No, probably not. Yeah, that is certainly something that I would like to see addressed as well. And I think there's a common consensus, with the players on that one too. But look, the game of golf, I think, is in a great place. I mean, I think we always have these conversations of what we can do to make the game better, or grow the game, or expand the game. I mean, I think it's in a pretty good place. I mean, yeah, there's a couple of little things that us golf nerds want changed, whether it be green reading books or arm lock putting or whatever it is. But from a whole and looking at the game from a entirety of it, I think it's in a really good place.
All the way on the right.
Rory, can you expound on just why the green books are such an advantage?
It's not that it's an advantage, really. It's just taking away a skill that takes time and practice to be mastered. I think reading greens is a real skill that some people are better at than others, and it just nullifies that. It nullifies that advantage that people have. So, yeah, and honestly, I think it's made everyone lazier. People don't put in the time to prepare the way they used to, and that's why you see so many more players at Augusta, for example, take their time around the greens, hit so many more putts, is because they have to, because there is no greens book at Augusta. So, look, it might take practice rounds. It might make practice rounds a little longer, and you might have to do a little bit more work. But I think once we get to the tournament rounds, it'll speed up play, and I think it'll help the guys that really have done their homework. It'll help them stand out a little more.
Right behind me, Doug.
I always think back to 07 at Oakmont when Phil injured his wrist practicing out of the rough at Oakmont, and just made me wonder what it's been like this week. I'm hearing spotty, I'm hearing juicy in spots.
Yeah,
how is it going to be?
It's I think if you see your ball sailing into the rough, you're hoping that you're just going to get lucky. There's some, it can settle into the kikuyu that's really sticky and juicy, but then it can settle into there's patches of, even you can see the patches of poa out there that are like the more like yellowish, brownish color. You just hope that your ball's going to land in one of those patches and you can get it out onto the green. But there's no substitute for hitting the ball off the fairway here. So, it's fairways and greens. It's a proper U.S. Open test, and the one way to keep you from injuring your wrist is by not going in it.
And thinking about Bryson last year and his approach to how to play wing foot, someone brought up the idea. We talk about graduated rough, going deeper the farther you get away from the fairway.
Yeah.
Have you ever considered what it would be if they graduated it toward the green? In other words, they made it super thick and juicy at 290, 300, 310, deeper that way to prevent bomb and gouge.
I don't like that, Doug, because I hit it 330.
I know that. What would you think of that? You wouldn't think much, obviously.
I wouldn't think much of it, no. I wouldn't like you setting up a golf course.
Would it be a way to combat what Bryson did last year? Or Rory? Excuse me.
I don't know, because Wingfoot's such a different animal to here. You had so many more openings into the greens at Wingfoot, for example. And the way those fairways were running, you could land it 30, 40 yards short and have it trundle up onto the putting surface. Where here, with the kikuyu grass, it's so spongy that you can't do that. It just hits and stops. So it depends on the course. It depends on the grass. There's so many different variables that go into it. I don't know. I mean, for example, I felt like the changes that Jack made to Memorial a couple of weeks ago, it took driver out of my hand a lot. And yeah, that's selfishly, I didn't like that, because, if I can get driver, I can have shorter clubs into the greens. But it sort of makes it hard, because then I'm having to hit 3-wood that goes 290. And
Same.
I know. And then the guys that I'm probably 20 yards longer off the tee are hitting drivers, and they're all of a sudden 15 yards ahead of me. And it's like, where's the balance? Where's the balance? So, yeah, I don't know. It's a very, you're not going to be able to set the golf course up completely, fairly for every single type of player. There's going to be golf courses that suit other players more than someone else, and I think that's just the way it is.
We're going to take another from the
Gonna
WebEx.
go with no.
Looking back on your 2011 U.S. Open win, how would you compare your mentality heading into a U.S. Open week then to now?
Yeah, I think the 11 U.S. Open was only my third one, and I'd played okay at Bethpage in 9. I missed the cut at Pebble in 10. Yeah, probably just a little more, less going on in my head, I guess, is probably the best way to describe it. Probably a little less cynical too. Sometimes I think you can sort of get into that mindset coming into U.S. Opens. But yeah, just trying to, first time I laid my eyes on Congressional, I thought, I can see myself shooting scores out here. It's not as if it's it's the same as here. You hit fairways, hit greens, and you can shoot good scores. So just a matter of getting into a little more of a positive mindset going into the tournament.
Last question right here.
Rory, I know you've left frustrated from the big tournament so far this year, but how close do you think you are to changing the narrative a little bit, maybe this week?
Yeah, it's. I feel like it's. Let me wait for that. Might take a while. Yeah. So Augusta, I was still in the middle of a transition of stuck in between what I was trying to do with my swing, and it wasn't a great week. Kiowa, I felt like I went into the week playing pretty well. I struggled on the left to right winds there, so even from the first tee shot on Thursday, hitting it into the water on 10. So since then I've changed my driver setup a little bit, and I feel a lot more comfortable with that. And I just, if I had played the par fives the same way Phil had played them at Kiowa, I would have won the golf tournament. I just played the par fives so badly. So, but every time you play a tournament, you learn something, and you try to put that into practice the next week. But it's not as if I won a tournament 4 or 5 weeks ago, so it's it's there. And I probably walking off Muirfield Village on a couple of Sundays ago, said to Harry, I felt like I played better at Memorial than I did at Quail Hollow. I finished 18th at Memorial and I won Quail Hollow. It's just it's golf at the end of the day, and sometimes it's unpredictable. But I'm feeling good about where my game is. So again, as I said at the very start, it's about going out there and playing as free as I can, and having that mentality that I had as a 22-year-old, and just trying to get into that mindset.
Rory, thanks so much for your time. Good luck.
Thank you.